Today's virtual meeting. Today's hearing is a continuation of the original hearing held on August 12th, 2020, which was continued to August 27th, 2020 to provide staff with additional time to conduct analysis related to the location of the proposed project and in response to comments that were received from the public after the staff report and the meeting packet was posted online. Yesterday's meeting, the August 27th hearing, was continued to today, and we appreciate the patience and forbearance of the applicant in waiting for today's hearing. Thank you for joining us this morning. Are we good? I'd ask everyone that's not speaking, please mute until you speak. We will start today's hearing with a public forum. Members of the online audience may submit written comments to the hearing officer on any subject that is not on this morning's agenda. The online agenda for this meeting includes a web link that will direct anyone who wants to make comments to submit those via email. Comments submitted in writing will be read into the record by the meeting secretary. Those submitting comments are asked to include their name and city of residence for the record. Comments will be limited to 1 minute. No response is required from city staff or the hearing officer on any agenda not on, any item not on today's agenda. So hearing secretary Liz Medina, have we received any email this morning with general comments for things not on the agenda? Oh, for some reason we can't hear you, Liz.
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, we have not received any public comment.
Great, thank you. I see you have a new background, and that's always good. You're keeping us on our toes, changing the background up. Okay, thank you, hearing secretary. With that, we will proceed with today's agenda. We have one item under public hearing. This is a new single-family home located at 250 Piedmont Road. The request is for a site development permit to allow the home 4,046 square feet, 2 stories. It's a single-family residence. The lot is currently vacant, and it's zoned R110 single-family residential. We have our assistant planner Avery Stark here to provide the staff report. Turn it over to Avery. Oh, I should note really quickly the order of the agenda. The hearing procedure will go as follows. I will identify the project as on the agenda, which I've just done. I will then ask staff, in this case Avery, to provide a brief staff report. When he's finished, the applicant or their representative may have up to 5 minutes to speak and should identify themselves by stating their name for the record. If you don't wish to speak, you may just introduce yourself and we will continue. After the applicant has spoken, any member of the public who wishes to speak on the item may provide testimony up to 2 minutes per speaker, either for or against the project. All speakers should state their name and city of residence for the record. And following the comments from the public, the applicant may then respond to public comments or make additional remarks up to 5 minutes. I'll then make a few comments, ask any questions that may come up, and we'll go from there. So Avery, if you may proceed with the staff report. Thank you.
All right, I'll wait for my presentation to get pulled up here. All right. Good morning, Ned Thomas, Zoning Administrator. My name is Avery Stark, and I'm an assistant planner. The item in front of you today is a site development permit for a new single-family residence located on the valley floor at 250 Piedmont Road. Next. The applicant is requesting a site development permit to allow the development of a new 4,046 square foot, 2-story single-family residence on a vacant 0.25 acre lot located in the R110 single-family residential zoning district. This site is not located in the Hillside Combining District or within a PUD. A site development permit is required for any new main building, subject to review by the zoning administrator. Next. This aerial map shows the general location of the site in regards to the adjacent homes. Located on the eastern border of the city on the valley floor, abutting the hillside, the project site and neighboring properties are zoned R110 and R16. Next. The proposed project meets the minimum front 25-foot setback, rear 35-foot setback, and is less than the maximum allowed height of 30 feet, and the parking requirements for the zoning district. Currently, the city zoning ordinance does not have residential design standards that dictate architectural or facade treatments. Therefore, the project is in conformance with the development standards such as setbacks, height limits, and parking requirements. Next. The proposed new single-family residence, again, will be a 2-story residence with 6 bedrooms, 4 full baths, and a 2-car attached garage with 3 parking spaces located on the driveway. The proposed single-family residence is designed with smooth white horizontal siding, white vertical batten board siding, charcoal black metal roof accents, and a composition roof. The proposed landscape includes a wide variety of existing and new trees, shrubs, ground cover, gravel, seed lawn, and pavers to enhance the existing site, which is vacant. The findings to be made for a site development permit are listed above. The home maintains a 25-foot, 2-inch setback from the front property line, and the front door is oriented to the street. All exterior materials and finishes work together using a palette of cool earth tone colors to blend with the surrounding residents and general design character of the neighborhood. Most of the houses within the neighborhood are 1- and 2-story contemporary homes. The project conforms with the Milpitas zoning ordinance, and the project site is zoned R110, and the proposed new building, as demonstrated in Table 1 of the staff report, complies with the development standards set forth in the zoning ordinance. 3, the project complies with the policies of the Milpitas general plan in supporting construction of a variety of housing types that meet the needs of homeowners. The second policy supports the application of promoting development within the incorporated limits and completes the existing urban fabric gaps rather than providing costly expansion to the urban service into outlining areas, which is as it abuts the hillside and the outside the city limits. And the third policy is that it meets the goal of fostering community and pride when growth through a beautification of existing and future development. The project meets these findings as the development beautifies a vacant parcel of land with a new, well-designed home. Next. 66 public notice postcards were sent to property owners within a 300-foot radius of the property boundaries. A notice of public hearing was posted originally in the Mercury News on Friday, July 31st, 2020. I received 1 call inquiring about the process of the zoning administrator hearing. I responded and left a voicemail for that individual. We received 1 mailed letter inquiring about water drainage of the site, and we will address that in today's discussion. We also received 2 emails inquiring about project-specific details, which is part of the reason for postponing the meeting to provide time to respond to those comments and questions, and can also be discussed during the discussion portion of this meeting. Staff recommends that the zoning administrator approve P-SD 19004 to allow for the construction of a new 4,046 square foot new single family residence on the valley floor, subject to the findings set forth in this report and the attached conditions of approval. This concludes my summary of the project. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Great, thank you, staff. I think I'll hold my questions until after we hear from the applicant in case they have any comments. So at this time, if you have any additional comments that you'd like to make, you have time up to 5 minutes now.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, my name is Daniel Warren with Warren Design. Again, I was hired to design this house for Jaspreet and Sunny to raise their family here in Milpitas. And again, as you can see, we had a number of challenges with the configuration of the site. So kind of did our best to kind of meet all the requirements and setbacks and everything. And again, I think, first off, I want to thank Avery with all the time and effort he's put in kind of helping us get to this point. And if anybody else has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any specific questions you have regarding the project.
Great, thank you. I'll now open the public hearing. In addition to the comments that have already been received, as noted in the staff report, meeting secretary, if we received any additional comments today.
So we received one mailed comment that was not included, that was yet to be included with the attachments for today's item. This is a letter from Clarence Silva dated August 7th. As a 60-year resident of the adjacent property, my main point is rainfall, water runoff that would affect this site. I'm sure it has been taken into consideration and planned for. Heavy rainfall in the past has caused Piedmont Creek to overflow and send water toward that site. The natural slope of my property also sends water toward that site in years above normal rainfall. That's from Mr. Clarence. We just received an email comment from Frank Bush. It says, will the home be built over the south aqueduct?
Oh, the aqueduct, yeah.
Aqueduct, okay. And that's all the public comment we have at this point.
Great, thank you very much. With that, we'll close the public hearing, and I have a few comments. If I can get to them. A few comments and questions. Oh, before I start though, I'll need to go back to the staff report. So normally what I will look at in these applications are the findings for approval. And there, for this type of an application, there are three. I'll address the first two. I'll go in opposite order of how they're written in the staff report. The first one is consistent with the Milpitas general plan, and staff has cited three policies in the general plan dealing with a variety of housing types, promoting infill development or sites that are served by existing services, and then a third one about the goal of fostering community pride through growth and beautification of existing and future development. So the finding can be made for consistency with the Milpitas general plan. There's a second one for consistency with the Milpitas zoning ordinance, as staff has outlined and is also further detailed in the staff report of the memorandum for today's meeting. The home meets the development standards of the single family zoning district. That's in terms of height of the building and the setbacks. And with, we'll talk about this in just a moment, but in specific regard, if you look at the site plan, there is a very large easement across the back of the site for the aqueduct, specific aqueduct easement there, and the home is outside of that easement. It was one of the constraints that the architect just mentioned for this site. The staff also mentioned that the property is not located within the hillside, even though it's in that general vicinity. This, under the map for the hillside, under which the hillside overlay applies, it does not apply to this site, and it's not part of a planned unit development or a PUD. And so it does meet and is consistent with the Milpitas zoning ordinance. Now, the next finding, or the last finding, is a little bit tricky. It's can be a little bit subjective, but we'll walk through this a little bit. And it has to do with the layout of the site and design of the proposed buildings, structures, and landscape are compatible and aesthetically harmonious with adjacent and surrounding development. As staff noted, the style of the home matches generally what's in the vicinity. It is a large home, but other homes in the area are also 1- and 2-story homes. The exterior materials and finishes work together to combine with the surrounding neighborhood. And What else can we say about that? And then the design of the building, we'll talk a little bit more in a minute, and then it will be fully landscaped. So some of the additional questions that I have, as I read through the staff report, and then based on some of the questions that have come in from the public that I would like to respond to on the record. The first one has to do with the aqueduct easement. And I think we have our assistant engineer here from the city's engineering department. And I just want to confirm that construction of the home will not pose any risk to the major water line that is running through the aqueduct easement, and that has been reviewed by the city, and that we have not found any risks involved in that, in the proximity to that water line. If I could have the engineer department.
Yeah. Good morning, zoning administrator. My name is Khan. I'm the city's land development engineer. And to answer that question, yes, we have a condition that requires the applicant to reach out to Department of Water Resources and obtain an approval for the design of the home. How it's currently designed, the property itself or the structure itself is located outside of the easement. So just to add an extra layer of assurance, the condition would cover any additional requests that Department of Water Resources would have in regards to the location and any additional design parameters that are needed for the house. So if the water main is located closer to the property, there may be some additional foundation considerations that may be added, but that will come from the that approval process to Department of Water Resources.
Great, thank you. And while we have you here, I should correct myself. I said assistant. That's because we're always getting great support from engineering department. But Khan is actually the principal engineer in the engineering department. And while we have you, so the letter that came in from Mr. Silva about drainage issues on the site, I know the plans included, always include the grading, and especially on a hillside area like this. Could you speak a little bit to how the drainage, any drainage issues will be addressed?
So the pad itself, now I don't recall exactly how high the property is in relation to the adjacent property, but the design should address and discharge runoff to the street area. So if there's any additional runoff coming from the adjacent site or any other location, the site drainage design, which should come as part of the construction drawing reviews, would need to divert the runoff to make sure that the current site is not being flooded during a heavy rainstorm event.
Thank you. And I wanted to clarify too for the public that both the drainage and the previous issue that we talked about with the aqueduct easement, those will both be addressed as part of the building permit process and with the submittal of the construction drawings, as you just noted. Is that you would review those at that time?
Yes.
And then just to close the loop, you mentioned that there's a condition of approval for that requires the applicant to work with the regional water resources. So to close the loop on that, does the condition of approval require them to submit a letter of approval from the Department of Water Resources on that, or how do we follow up on that?
Yeah, so it could, the applicant would need to reach out to the Department of Water Resources. They may require a permit submittal, or they may just respond and say, because your structure is not located within our easement, then nothing else is required. So I would leave that to the applicant to do that coordination and get something from the DWR.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I think that clarifies that issue both issues very well. I did note that the site plan shows a wooden step with a 3-foot paver landing, and this encroaches slightly, very slightly, into the aqueduct easement. And I'm just wondering if that is allowed, or is that something that I guess as the Department of Water Resources reviews the plans, would they comment on that? Or on the planning side, do we have any issues with that encroachment, or is that allowed in the zoning ordinance?
From a planning perspective, this was originally going to be a larger outdoor deck, which then the scope had to be reduced to meet that encroachment requirement. And through working with Con and Jennifer in the land development department and Daniel, the architect, we were able to land on, in the interim, the steps and the small pavers off the back of the home. But that would then be subject to review by DWR. Am I correct in that, Con?
Yes. Yeah, that's correct. Yes.
Great, thank you. So I was going to suggest another condition of approval prohibiting additional buildings or construction of any kind in the aqueduct easement. But as I reviewed that again, there is that idea is more or less referenced in the existing condition of approval, that the site will be developed in accordance with the plans as they've been submitted. So I just want to make it really, very clear and have it on the record that we've given notice to the applicant that additional construction is not allowed within the aqueduct easement. And that's any kind of construction, and not just a building, but any outbuildings, anything that goes into that easement would need to be cleared with the Department of Water Resources. I just wanted to have that as a clear understanding. One other question for planning, I think this is important. It was an issue that was raised by one of the public comments that came in for the previous hearing. On sheet 4A, it indicates the proposed color of the exterior siding is white, but the staff report indicates, and it was also stated this morning, that the exterior colors will be earth tones to blend with the hillside. And I think that's very important on this particular site, as it will be very visible both from Piedmont Road and the surrounding neighborhood. The plans are showing that the exterior color is white, and that's going to be, for lack of a better way to describe it, it's going to stick out like a sore thumb. I think that we need to adhere to the comment that was made about the exterior colors will be earth tones to blend with the hillside. And again, this is a little bit subjective, but to me, acceptable colors would be something more along the lines of a gray or a beige or a tan or a muted green, something that is going to blend into the hillside in the surrounding neighborhood and not be so, I don't know, bright and we don't allow reflective materials, that sort of things in the hillside. I think we need to adhere a little bit more closely to that. So I'm going to suggest that we either receive agreement from the applicant and the architect. We will check this at the building permit stage, but if needed, we can add a condition of approval that requires the exterior materials and colors to be reviewed by the planning department prior to issuance of the building permit, and that acceptable colors are as noted. With white is not an acceptable color. I don't know if planning or if the applicant has any comment about that issue.
Yeah, I can comment on the white. It is, again, a bit subjective and a challenging portion of our review process, because we don't have further descriptors or definitions to provide us with what those colors may be. And in driving around the community and in that neighborhood, there are a number of homes that that are painted white. The adjacent property, although not located within the city limits, is a completely white structure with white fencing and white siding. The home does maintain a lot of the same characteristics architecturally within the neighboring homes. And again, not located technically within the hillside combining district, but on the valley floor. The roof metal can be approved through site development permit, which are little accent portions. The composition comp roof is very traditional and standard amongst the majority of the homes in that area. But yes, we can certainly look to find a more acceptable color that is off-white or gray or truly fitting within the cool earth tone colors to satisfy that requirement of the municipal code.
Yeah, this and just so that the applicant knows we're not just being picky city staff. This was a comment that was made several times by the public as they were writing into us. So I did want to pay attention to it. And I don't know, for the architect or the applicant, do you have any feedback on that. Are you open to considering not necessarily a very bright white color, but something that's a little bit more muted that would blend into the hillside?
Yes, and what I would suggest is, and I can work with Avery on this, but maybe we can look at some shades and more kind of the reflectivity, just to make sure that it is something that's dialed back a little bit.
Perfect, perfect. That will be fine. So yes, please continue to work, and we won't. Again, I don't think we need to add the condition of approval to make it. I think we all understand what we're trying to achieve here, and yes, please continue to work. And then my last question has to do with another comment that came in from the public previously. I know that engineering has added a condition of approval number 18. It references a memo that was from the engineering department, and this is to address the proximity to the Hayward Fault and some of the seismic considerations. We will add a copy of the memo to the online resources for this meeting. And let's see, I guess, Con, if you're still here, if you could speak a little bit to how we address in the city, or kind of what is required in the condition of approval, that how do we address development when it occurs within close proximity to the fault, or even to the aqueduct easement, something that might be pose a risk to development of the site.
Yes, so the requirement or condition that we provided the applicant should follow is to have a detailed geotechnical report to address the proximity to the Hayward Fault. So the updated geotechnical report should conform with publication 117A, which is a federal guidelines. And we would require that the geotechnical report be peer reviewed by the city, and the design should conform to that geotechnical report.
So that happens also with the building permit, prior to issuance of a building permit. And I would imagine that it's a little bit of a collaboration between the engineering department. Obviously, you're reviewing the geotechnical report, but I believe the building department will also have certain requirements for any type of construction within a known, or within proximity to a known earthquake fault.
Yes, that's correct. So the both the building department and the engineering department would be would need to review that report. Yes.
Great. Thank you. I primarily wanted to have that for the public record in case there are, is anyone out there that had, or the person who had that concern is watching today, that it has been addressed and will continue to be addressed throughout the building permit process. Connor, Avery, do you know, I didn't see a map or a diagram in the project plans for this hearing. And again, we're kind of at the preliminary stage of the development review process, but I didn't see anything that actually showed the fault on a map. And as the applicant prepares their submittal for the building permit, do they usually, or would we require them to include a sheet that has the site plan that shows where the fault is located? I've seen those sometimes with other applications like this. And is that something that we can ask for, or that we would normally ask for at this time?
I would defer to Khan on that. And to go back on what we were just discussing, those conditions that Khan talked about, that memo we will update with the revised date of August 12th. I'll also update the staff report. But those conditions are prior to construction plan submittal, that revised geotechnical report be provided. So it will be something that we'll have an answer to before they submit their construction drawing. So if there was a change to the home design that needed to be addressed, we'd be able to bring it back to you, zoning administrator, for any final approval if necessary.
Oh, yes, of course, the correct me if I'm wrong, I don't often review the geotechnical reports, but I think that will have that will include a diagram that shows the location of the fault in relation to the proposed building.
Yeah, so the updated geotechnical report should have should show the approximate location based on USGS maps. Now, the actual location of the faults, depending on it shifts. So the USGS maps aren't as accurate as they should be, which is why it's critical that the applicant's geotechnical engineer provide a report, and if necessary, do excavation to determine if the fault has shifted to see where it's currently located. So all of that would be the work that geotechnical engineer would be doing.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarification. So with that, we've covered the findings in the staff report. All of those, I find that we're able to make the findings of approval. We've discussed some of the design issues that would address one of the findings regarding compatibility and compatibility with the neighborhood. And then I think we've adequately addressed the concerns that have been raised by the public, either in writing, well, I guess all in writing because we're in a virtual meeting, so either by email or by phone. And I just want to, again, explain that this particular permit is a little bit early in the process, and as we've heard in some of the explanations of what happens now, there are conditions of approval attached to the site development permit that can be issued out of today's hearing, and that includes a number of conditions of approval that give direction or provide direction to the applicant for what the next steps that they need to do as they prepare their construction drawings and submit for a building permit. So there's quite a bit of work that's left to do. This is a little bit of a preliminary. It's a planning entitlement that allows them to develop the site, and then they move forward into the next steps, and they will work with the building department, the planning department, and the engineering department in this case as they move forward with their plans. But I find that we are able to make all the findings for approval, and will approve. I need to pull up I want to get this exactly right. So we're going to, before I accept the staff's recommendation, I also want to note that the project is exempt from environmental review under CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. This is new construction. There's a specific exemption from CEQA for new construction of small structures, and this would include a single family residence of the type that is proposed on this site. And that's under section 15183 of the CEQA guidelines. Excuse me, that's a separate exemption. The new construction exemption is under section 15303 of the CEQA guidelines, and then the site is actually also exempt under section 15183 of the CEQA guidelines for projects that are consistent with the general plan and zoning, as we have discussed in our hearing today. So with that, I will approve P-SD 19-0004. This is a site development permit to allow development of a 4,046 square foot new single family residence subject to the conditions of approval in the staff report. Congratulations. We wish you well in the next steps of the development process.
Thank you.
That's our only item on today's agenda. Again, we appreciate the patience of the applicant as we have worked through the hearing process and dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's. And we like to make sure that our decisions are based on solid ground, so that as we move forward, that we're pointed in the right direction. With that, in closing, I'll just mention that any person aggrieved by any decision of any board, commission, or department head of the city of Milpitas may appeal the decision to the city council by filing written notice of the appeal with the city clerk within 12 calendar days of the date of said decision and paying the required fee. This time limit is strictly enforced. And with that, we will adjourn. This concludes the administrative hearing of August 28th, 2020, and we thank everyone for their participation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.